If you are a Scorpio watching this, there's something you need to hear right now, and it may explain a pattern in your life that has never fully made sense. Because Scorpio doesn't carry karma the way other signs do. Scorpio stores it, compresses it, lives inside it, and then one day, detonates it into transformation. The reason your life has never been light or casual is not because you are unlucky, difficult, or too intense. It's because your soul chose the hardest curriculum. While others learn through comfort, Scorpio learns through loss, betrayal, silence, and rebirth. And the twist is this: you were never meant to stay in pain, only to pass through it and come out changed. Most Scorpios grow up feeling like something invisible is watching them, testing them, pushing them into emotional depths earlier than everyone else. You might have learned very young that trust can be dangerous, that love can disappear overnight, that power often hides behind smiles. So you adapted. You became observant, controlled, emotionally armored. You learned to survive by understanding people better than they understood themselves. And here's the part no one tells you: that wasn't trauma for nothing. That was karmic training. In past lives, Scorpio energy often held secrets, power, manipulation, or emotional leverage. In this life, the soul must experience the other side of that equation: vulnerability, exposure, emotional truth, and loss of control, not as punishment, but as balance. For Scorpios born in late October, this karmic debt often shows up through trust and betrayal. You may repeatedly encounter situations where someone proves unreliable, dishonest, or emotionally unsafe, forcing you to learn discernment instead of paranoia. For those born in early November, the lesson centers on control and surrender. Life keeps breaking your plans, shaking your certainty, dismantling what you thought was solid, until you learn that real power isn't domination, it's flexibility. And for mid-November Scorpios, karma works through attachment and release. You love deeply, intensely, sometimes obsessively, until you learn that love does not mean possession. At some point, Scorpio hits a wall, a moment where the emotional weight becomes unbearable. A breakup that doesn't just hurt but rewires you. A betrayal that forces you to question everyone. A loss that strips away your old identity. This is not your downfall. This is the initiation point. This is where Scorpio karma begins to resolve. Because unlike other signs, Scorpio does not pay karmic debt by being nice or endlessly giving. Scorpio pays it by telling the truth, even when it costs everything. By choosing emotional honesty over emotional safety. By letting go of control when holding on would destroy you. You may notice something strange when this shift begins. The people who thrived on your silence start to feel uncomfortable. Those who benefited from your emotional labor begin to drift away. You stop explaining yourself. You stop chasing closure. You stop needing revenge. Not because you're weak, but because you see clearly now. And clarity is Scorpio's final form. This is the moment your karma turns from suffering into authority. Not loud authority, quiet, dangerous, grounded authority. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything. Here's the real-life insight most people miss. Scorpio transformation doesn't look dramatic from the outside. Internally, it's a demolition. Externally, it looks like calm. You start sleeping better. You stop replaying conversations. Your nervous system relaxes for the first time in years. You become selective with your energy. And suddenly, opportunities appear that align with your depth instead of exploiting it. People start respecting your boundaries without you forcing them. That's how you know the debt is being cleared. If this is resonating, I want you to pause for a second and check in with yourself. Have you noticed that you're less reactive lately, but more decisive? That you no longer tolerate half-truths, mixed signals, or emotional games? That you're not as interested in proving people wrong as you are in protecting your peace? That's not you becoming cold. That's you becoming complete. Scorpio, your karma was never about suffering forever. It was about learning how to die to versions of yourself that no longer serve you. And once you do, life starts responding differently. Love becomes healthier. Work becomes more aligned. Your intuition sharpens instead of screaming. You stop attracting chaos because you no longer resonate with it. I'm curious, and this is where I want you to engage. What was the moment in your life that changed you the most? The one that forced you to become stronger than you ever wanted to be? Drop it in the comments, even if you don't explain it fully. Other Scorpios will recognize it without details. And if you're feeling like you're standing at the edge of another transformation right now, trust this. Scorpio does not lose themselves. Scorpio sheds skins. And every time you do, you come back with more power, more clarity, and far less fear. Stay with this energy. Save this. Come back to it when you feel yourself slipping into old patterns. Because the version of you that survives this chapter won't just be stronger. They'll be untouchable in the quietest, most dangerous way possible. There is a phase every Scorpio reaches that almost no one talks about, because from the outside it looks like nothing is happening, but inside it feels like an underground earthquake that never quite stops. This is the phase where you're no longer reacting, no longer exploding, no longer chasing answers, and that silence confuses people who are used to your intensity. They think you've calmed down, softened, lost your edge. What they don't see is that this is the moment Scorpio becomes surgical. You're no longer emotional in a loud way. You're emotional in a precise way. You don't argue, you observe. You don't demand, you decide. And this shift alone ends entire karmic cycles without you having to confront anyone directly. For many Scorpios, this stage arrives after emotional burnout, the kind that doesn't look dramatic but feels like emptiness where obsession used to live. You stop overthinking why people did what they did. You stop replaying the betrayal. You stop fantasizing about closure. And that's when something almost unsettling happens. Your intuition becomes quieter but sharper. Instead of warning you loudly, it simply removes people from your life. Conversations fade. Connections dissolve without conflict. Situations that once drained you suddenly feel irrelevant. This isn't loss. This is energetic authority. Scorpio learns that power isn't forcing outcomes. It's choosing where not to participate. In real life, this shows up in subtle ways. You become harder to manipulate because you no longer need validation. You become harder to provoke because you don't take emotional bait. You become harder to replace because you stop overgiving. And the irony is that once you stop trying to be indispensable, people finally realize your value. Work environments shift, relationships rebalance. Some people step up, others vanish. Both outcomes are correct. Scorpio karma clears not when everyone stays, but when only the right ones do. Emotionally, this is where Scorpio finally releases the belief that depth must equal suffering. You begin to experience calm intimacy instead of intense attachment, loyalty without fear, connection without control. And this might feel unfamiliar at first, almost boring because your nervous system was trained on chaos. But over time, your body relaxes into this new frequency. You laugh more quietly. You breathe deeper. You no longer feel like you're bracing for impact. And this is when Scorpio realizes the ultimate karmic lesson. Peace is not weakness. Peace is power that no longer needs armor. If you're watching this and feeling strangely seen, like this isn't hype but memory, you're probably already in this transition. You may not have words for it yet, but you can feel it. The urge to retreat, the desire to simplify, the need to protect your energy instead of proving your worth. Honor that instinct. Scorpio intuition doesn't scream when it's wrong. It whispers when it's right. If you want to anchor this shift, leave a comment with a single word that describes who you are becoming now, not who you used to be. You don't need to explain it. Other Scorpios will feel it immediately. And save this video, not as motivation, but as a reminder that you are not broken, delayed, or punished. You are in a recalibration phase most people never reach. This chapter isn't about revenge, intensity, or proving strength. It's about mastery, quiet mastery, emotional sovereignty. The kind of inner control that makes chaos unnecessary. Scorpio was never meant to live loudly forever. Scorpio was meant to transform, disappear, and return wiser, calmer, and unrecognizable in the most powerful way possible. There comes a point in the Scorpio journey where even transformation itself begins to feel heavy because you've already died so many internal deaths that the idea of reinventing yourself again sounds exhausting rather than exciting. This is where Scorpio enters a rarer stage. One that isn't about becoming stronger, sharper, or more resilient, but about becoming lighter without becoming shallow. And this is difficult for Scorpio, because for most of your life, depth was your identity. Pain made you interesting. Endurance made you powerful. Intensity made you visible. Letting go of that can feel like losing yourself, even when it's actually the moment you finally meet who you are without the armor. In this phase, Scorpio stops narrating their pain, even internally. You no longer need your story to justify your boundaries or explain your silence. You don't rehearse explanations in your head. You don't imagine future confrontations. Your inner dialogue quiets, and in that quiet, something stabilizes. You begin to feel grounded instead of guarded, present instead of vigilant. It's not numbness, it's resolution. The nervous system no longer scans for threats because it trusts your ability to walk away. That trust in yourself is the real reward most Scorpios never knew they were working toward. Life responds to this energy in understated but unmistakable ways. Decisions become easier. You don't spiral before choosing. You don't second-guess your instincts after the fact. You act once, cleanly, and move on. Opportunities that require drama or emotional compromise stop appealing to you, even if they come with status or excitement. Instead, you're drawn to environments that feel stable, honest, and emotionally intelligent. This is when Scorpio begins to build a life that doesn't just survive chaos, but actively rejects it. Relationships change shape here. You no longer bond through shared wounds or mutual intensity. You bond through consistency, trust, and emotional maturity. And if that sounds less thrilling, notice how your body reacts. There's less tension, less waiting, less wondering where you stand. Love stops feeling like a test and starts feeling like a place to rest. Scorpio doesn't lose passion in this stage. It becomes contained, deliberate, and deeply loyal rather than volatile. This is also when Scorpio's presence becomes quietly intimidating in the best way. You speak less, but people listen more. You don't explain your standards, but others adjust around them. You're no longer reactive, so others feel your boundaries without you enforcing them. This isn't detachment. It's self-possession, the kind that can't be shaken by mixed signals, manipulation, or emotional pressure. The kind that makes your silence feel louder than arguments ever did. What's important to understand is that this phase isn't the end of Scorpio intensity, it's its refinement, like pressure turning coal into something else entirely. You still feel deeply, but now your emotions inform you rather than control you. You still see beneath the surface, but you no longer feel obligated to dive into every shadow. You choose depth instead of being pulled into it. This is the Scorpio who no longer fears losing people, because you trust that what remains will be real. You no longer fear being misunderstood, because you're no longer trying to be understood by everyone. And most importantly, you no longer fear starting over, because you've learned that nothing truly aligned with you can be taken away, only revealed. This stage is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. There's no dramatic rebirth moment, but if you're here, you'll recognize it by one simple feeling. For the first time, your life doesn't feel like a battle you have to win. It feels like something you are finally allowed to live. There is a subtle moment in the Scorpio journey when you realize that nothing is chasing you anymore. No unfinished business clawing at your back, no emotional ghosts demanding answers. No inner voice whispering that you must become someone else to be safe. It doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives quietly, almost suspiciously, in ordinary days that feel steady. And for Scorpio, steadiness can feel foreign at first. You've lived so long in emotional intensity that calm can feel like a warning sign. But this calm is different. It doesn't feel empty, it feels settled. This is the stage where Scorpio stops living in anticipation of pain. You no longer brace yourself for disappointment even when things are going well. You don't wait for the other shoe to drop. You stop scanning people for hidden motives. Not because people suddenly became perfect, but because you trust yourself to leave the moment something feels wrong. That trust rewires everything. Your body softens, your thoughts slow. Your reactions become measured instead of instinctive. You're no longer surviving emotionally. You're inhabiting your life. One of the most overlooked changes during this phase is how Scorpio relates to time. Before, everything felt urgent. Feelings needed resolution. Conversations needed closure. Decisions needed certainty. Now, time expands. You don't rush healing. You don't force outcomes. You allow things to unfold without gripping them. And paradoxically, life moves faster when you stop trying to control it. Situations resolve themselves. People reveal themselves without interrogation. Truth surfaces without confrontation. Scorpio learns that patience is not passivity, it's confidence. Professionally, this is when Scorpio stops tolerating environments that drain their emotional intelligence without rewarding it. You no longer confuse stress with importance. You no longer accept chaos as proof that something matters. Instead, you gravitate toward roles, projects, and spaces where depth is respected, boundaries are honored, and emotional maturity is valued. Your work becomes quieter but more impactful. You don't need to dominate rooms. Your presence alone shifts dynamics. People feel when someone has nothing to prove. This is also the phase where Scorpio's intuition transforms again. It's no longer hypervigilant or reactive. It becomes neutral, almost detached, which makes it far more accurate. You don't get pulled into emotional noise. You see patterns clearly because you're not emotionally entangled in them. And this clarity doesn't make you cold. It makes you fair. You stop demonizing people who can't meet you where you are. You simply recognize incompatibility and move on without resentment. That release of resentment is one of the final karmic unlocks for Scorpio. Emotionally, something profound happens. You realize that intensity is no longer your currency. Authenticity is. You don't perform depth, you live it. You don't bond through crisis. You bond through presence. And when love enters your life at this stage, it doesn't knock the wind out of you. It steadies you. It doesn't demand sacrifice. It encourages balance. Scorpio finally experiences love that doesn't require self-abandonment, secrecy, or emotional tests. Love becomes a place where you don't disappear, where you don't have to hide your softness to be respected. This doesn't mean Scorpio loses their edge. You still perceive what others miss. You still sense undercurrents. You still understand darkness intimately, but now you are not pulled toward it. You can walk alongside it without drowning. You understand that not every truth needs to be spoken. Not every injustice needs your intervention. Not every emotional storm is yours to navigate. Discernment replaces compulsion. As this integration deepens, you may notice your identity loosening. Labels that once defined you no longer fit. You are no longer the intense one, the mysterious one, the guarded one, or the one who's been through too much. You're simply yourself, complex, grounded, evolving. You don't need others to understand you fully. You only need to understand yourself honestly. That internal alignment creates a sense of quiet dignity that people respond to instinctively. Family dynamics shift here as well. Scorpio often carries ancestral weight. Emotional patterns passed down through silence, loyalty, and unspoken pain. In this phase, you stop carrying what was never yours to hold. You love without rescuing. You engage without absorbing. You allow others to face their own growth instead of buffering them from discomfort. This isn't detachment, it's respect. And over time, this recalibration heals more than confrontation ever could. The final truth Scorpio learns is perhaps the most liberating one. You don't need to transform endlessly to be worthy of peace. You were never broken. You were becoming. Each loss, each ending, each silence refined you. And now, there is nothing left to prove to the universe, to others, or to yourself. The hunger for intensity fades because fulfillment arrives quietly. Not as excitement, but as contentment. You begin to enjoy small, grounded pleasures without guilt. Rest without explanation. Joy without suspicion. Stability without boredom. Your life may look simpler from the outside, but internally, it feels vast, spacious, free. You are no longer defined by what you survived, but by how gently you now live. And this is where the Scorpio journey softens into something almost sacred. You understand that power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it breathes. Sometimes it listens. Sometimes it chooses peace over depth, clarity over intensity, and truth over attachment. You still carry your depth, but it no longer weighs you down. It supports you. This chapter doesn't close with a dramatic ending. It fades into something warmer, something steadier. A life that no longer revolves around healing wounds, but around inhabiting wholeness. And if you're here, even sensing this shift, trust that nothing essential has been lost. What fell away was never meant to follow you into this version of your life. You've already survived the hardest transformations. What comes next isn't another test. It's a season of living without armor, of choosing peace without apology, of allowing life to meet you where you finally stand grounded, aware, and quietly powerful.